but we are going to be recording it. So, okay, I think it started. There we go. Awesome. Cool, so we'll jump in. So again, this session's about living and serving. So the first thing I want to kind of share with everyone is this map. And so after the call is done, probably sometime tomorrow afternoon, once I get the recording edited and everything done that we needed, I'm going to share this recording with you. I'll share this PowerPoint deck with you. And so the first thing I kind of want to talk about is this resource. So this is a screenshot of a map that I'll go into and show you in a second, but this map has all of the schools that we serve in Seattle on it. You will notice that most of our schools are down here on the south end of Seattle. Downtown is like right in here. We added a new school this year, all the way up here in North Seattle. So this is kind of our little outlier school, but I will show you this map. I think it's a really great resource because y'all can use it. And you can put in other pins and stuff when you're looking at housing, looking at what's around and see how far things are from the schools. So, you know, when I send out the PowerPoint deck, definitely utilize this map. You can drop in whatever you want, houses that you're looking at, apartments you're looking at, places you want to visit, and see how close they are. But this is a map that we put together. The only thing that's not on here that I will put on here if we know soon enough is we're currently transitioning, going through an office transition. And so our current office is in Rainier Beach. See if I can find it. It's not labeled on here, but it's on Rainier Avenue here. I don't know if that's where we're going to be by the time you all start, but once we figure out where our new space is going to be, I will let you all know. But I wanted to share this resource with you as you're looking at housing and different things. So definitely utilize this map. But you know, otherwise, it definitely does just give you a nice overview of where our schools are and to think about where you would like to potentially look at housing. So. We'll be coming back kind of talking about areas and neighborhoods and stuff. But first, I'm going to pass it over to Hannah to chat a little bit about the schools we serve in and the number of core members we have and stuff.
Thanks, Bear. Hey, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm a program manager at Rising Star Elementary School. Just finishing up my first year as a program manager. But just to give you an overview of what to expect as you start your service year next year, or in 2 months in August, we'll have a core of 95 AmeriCorps members. That'll consist 71 first-year AmeriCorps members and 24 returning AmeriCorps members. And returning AmeriCorps members include our team leaders, second-year AmeriCorps members, and 2 awesome civic engagement corps members. And we also serve at 11 schools, as you saw in that map. It's spread out pretty evenly across Southeast and Southwest Seattle. And then this next year will be our first year partnering with Olympic Hills in North Seattle. And you can see the breakdown of elementary, middle, and high schools. We definitely lean more elementary school, but there are opportunities to connect with students in a secondary environment. We can go to the next one. These are the schools that we serve in. I served at Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School, Dream Keepers, for 2 years. And then this year I have been working with Rising Star. So I'm a East Side, person, but love the schools on the West Side. Leslie here is working at Concord International Elementary School, so got some West Side pride as well. And yeah, these are all of our schools that we serve at. You'll get to know them a lot more, but we find a lot of pride in the schools that we serve with. Cool. And so you can learn a little bit more about me here. As I told you, my name is Hannah. I'm a program manager this year, but I previously served with City Year Seattle in 2018, and then returned to the same school, Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary, for the 2019-2020 school year, which was a fun school year of in-person transitioning to virtual. And then this whole year, managing a team who you can see right here on beautiful Teams Together mode under the sea. We've been primarily virtual this whole year, and then in April transitioned to a hybrid program. So I was able to meet a lot of my team in person for the first time in April. A little bit about why I serve. I serve to be a part of something that is bigger than myself, to center my purpose towards disrupting systemic inequities in our education system. And I serve to be a trusting adult that believes in students and someone who sees their brilliance, beauty, creativity, and joy. And to be in the building finally back with students and at recess has been very life-giving the past few weeks and month. Um, so a little bit about like the relationship you might have between your impact manager, like you as a core member and impact manager. Your manager is there as a resource and a support, someone who you'll check in with kind of every other week, someone who will come to your small groups, observe, debrief, kind of have that learning partnership and coaching partnership together. And then, yeah, I think another element of the year is thinking about your own growth as a young person and who you want to be in the world, whether you want to go into education and be a teacher or a social worker or a school counselor, or if you're going to med school or grad school after a city year. Another part of like working with your manager is kind of thinking about what does life and leadership after city year look like. And that's ongoing conversations we have throughout the year. Based on who you want to be as a person. You know, we're here to support you with that. I'll pass it to Leslie and she can give you more of the core member perspective and team leader perspective.
Cool. Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everybody. My name is Leslie Hernandez. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am this year's team leader for one of our schools on the Southwest side, Concord International. And I'm very lucky to have been able to come back. Last year, I got to serve there as a core member. I worked in a third grade dual language classroom. So that was very exciting. And then this year I'm serving as a team leader, so I get to kind of guide my team through like this whole experience. Given that, you know, this year was definitely unique compared to other ones in the past. But before I dive into my serve statement, I just wanted to like highlight these pictures. So the bottom right one is my team from last year. And I'm very grateful for them. As a core member, I really relied on my team for support. I am from Los Angeles, California, so I moved to Seattle really not knowing anyone or anything about the city. So having my teammates to rely on was like very nice. We would like work all day together and then like have dinner like after work. So yeah, you really get to make like what you would like out of this experience. And then on the top left, we have a picture of my current team. They're great. It's definitely been a different experience compared to like last year, but definitely, yeah, like they were both very different years, but they both had a lot of like learning and a lot of growth to be offered. So now I will continue with my serve statement. So I serve because I do this work because I hope to continue to gain experience and insight on how I can be the most equitable educator, empower and inspire students to believe in their strengths and challenge their growth, and to be an asset to the learning students not only do in the classroom but through life. And also want to highlight why I serve statement has changed a lot over the year. Maybe you have already been asked, you know, like, why did you join City Year? And you're gonna get that question a lot through the year. And like, you know, we all come in with like one one perspective, and then like as the year goes on, like you're gonna experience a lot of things. So you're gonna definitely like add to it, change to it. But yeah, the main reason like why I joined City Year was just to like gain experience within the field of education, because I knew that I wanted to work within the field, but not exactly sure how. As you all know, like City Year is a really good way just to kind of get a feel of what it's like to work within the school environment. So if that's something that is potentially like on your interest, like I would say definitely take advantage of that. Like you're going to be working in a school, so you are going to be like have a lot of connections. So really take advantage of that. And then lastly, my favorite part of about Seattle is the views. Like I included 2 pictures here. The top right one is just like a walk that a picture of a scene that I took on a walk like right by my house. And then the bottom left is a picture of a view when I went up the Space Needle. Definitely, you know, it's a touristy thing, but something that you have to do like while you're here. And yeah, like I'm from LA, so it's like very different. The one thing that I do appreciate about Seattle is it's like very green. There's a lot of water around, and like it's unexpected views everywhere. Like you can just be like walking down the street and just be like, wow, like you know what's this beautiful view? Or like driving down the road. Like yeah, there's a lot of hills, so it's a lot of good viewpoints. Um, but yeah, and then as for like the core, like the ACM experience, um, there's a lot that we do. The one thing that I do really appreciate is that we are kind of seen as like near peer mentors, which is like a really unique position to be in because like you're not like when kiddos like approach you, like they see you more as like a mentor friend, not so much like a teacher. So that's always like nice in like the relationship building because it's somebody else that they can feel like they can go to and trust in. So yeah, that's definitely been one of the highlights about being an ACM. And then I believe there's a Q&A, so if there's any more questions, you know, there will be a chance to ask away.
Definitely. Thank you, Hannah and Leslie. Yes, there's going to be a Q&A. So as we're finishing up going through the rest of these slides here, think about questions that you might have for Hannah, who again is a program manager and could potentially be your program manager after you start with us if you're based at her school. And then Leslie, who has 2 years of service experience with Seattle, City of Seattle. So we're just going to talk about a few different things really quickly. So I wanted to share this list with y'all. And as part of our housing sort of support, I'm also going to share out some information that we gathered from the currently serving Corps about good places to look for housing and places that they have lived. And get you some links to those as well. But this is just a list of places that, and I'm actually going to go to the smaller screen just because it looks like it's getting cut off a little bit at the bottom. So these are some neighborhoods that are close to our schools that Corps members have lived in the past and where rent and housing is affordable. Yeah, I guess I'll read them to you and maybe try to locate some of them. The Delridge neighborhood is it's in Southwest Seattle, and Delridge is a street that kind of runs north to south, and there's a few schools around there. It's kind of near Rocks Hill and Denier National Middle School, and Chief South. And then Beacon Hill, which is kind of over closer to our office, but also close to some of our southeast schools. But Beacon Hill is also like a crossing point, not too far from there to get over to the west side of the city. There's the Rainier Valley neighborhood, Soto, Columbia City, Mount Baker, South Park. A lot of those are on the southeast side. And then on the southwest side, there's places like White Center, Arbor Heights, Highland Park, and West Seattle. And then these are somewhat new. We usually have core members live in Lake City in the U District as well, except, but this year we're actually gonna have a school up on the north end as well. So in the past, we've had people live up there and kind of commute down to the south to schools, but if you are able to find housing in Lake City or the U District up north, there's also going to be a school up there that we serve in this year. So those are kind of neighborhoods that have affordable housing near our schools. This sort of second list here, these are some of the more popular neighborhoods you may hear about in Seattle. We put popular / expensive because, well, these are like very popular neighborhoods. Like either living on a stipend may not be these may not be the best neighborhoods to live in unless you're coming with a certain amount of savings or something like that. But they are great neighborhoods to live in as well. So First Hill, Capitol Hill, Queen Anne, Fremont, Ballard, and Wallingford. All of these neighborhoods are also like north of downtown. So that puts you a little bit farther from most of our schools. And then just a few cities that we know core members have lived in the past that also have affordable housing, and especially, still have some bus routes that get to our schools as well, are Berrien and Renton. Those are both just south of the city, touching Seattle on the south, kind of the southeastern side. So those are good cities to look at and live in for housing as well. If you have a car and you plan on bringing a car, Berrien and Renton, make a lot of sense. There are bus routes that go out there too, but not as many as when you're in the city. So this is sort of a list to start looking at and thinking about as you're looking for housing. Again, I'm going to send out this deck so you can look up some of these neighborhoods in addition to sort of a mini housing guide that has some information from currently serving core members. Just a little bit about transportation. Transportation is different across all of our city sites. I oversee 2 very different sites. I oversee Seattle and Detroit. So I like to highlight that public transportation in Seattle is super extensive. And as part of being a core member serving in Seattle, you will get an Orca pass, and that'll get you on pretty much every bus route and every light rail on our light rail system for free. And so additionally, with us adding a northern sort of school in the city, by October, they expect to have the light rail going all the way up there as well. And so you definitely do not need a car to serve in Seattle. You can get around in public transportation just fine. I know Leslie and Hannah may not know this because I served before them, but there was a point in time in Seattle where you actually weren't allowed to have a car if you wanted to serve in Seattle. Obviously, that's not a rule anymore. You're more than welcome to have a car, but very public transit friendly city. Just some things to think about if you do plan on bringing a car. Make sure that wherever you find housing that you know what the parking situation is there. Some apartments have free parking if you're renting from them. Some houses have driveways and stuff, but also some places will charge for a permit for underground parking or something like that. Or you may have to buy a permit to park on the street in your neighborhood. So if you're bringing a car, that's something to think about because parking can be hard to find and expensive in Seattle. So just things to think about. Also, just recognize too that not all of our schools have parking spaces for our members. A good chunk of them do, but I know, for example, when I served, there was free parking on the street, but that was kind of hit or miss because the parking lot literally only held like 10 cars, just because of the location of the school. A good chunk of our schools will have parking, but just something else to think about that it could be a challenge in commuting to school as well. I would say like there's definitely positives of having a car too. Being able to get around Seattle is great. There are tons of beauty and nature and cool things in Seattle, but Washington has much more to offer than just Seattle. We have 3 national parks, not, within a couple hours drive of Seattle. And so having a car can, open up the opportunities to, go see Mount Rainier or go see the North Cascades or, go across the ferry and see the Olympic National Park. So it definitely opens up opportunities. I would say like if you are bringing a car, there's going to be like folks that need help with transportation, and not saying that you must, but there is a culture of like carpooling and exchanging rides for a little bit of money for folks you work with. Just it's sort of another small way to try and build a little team and camaraderie. If you do have a car, I know that I mostly got around in service on public transportation, but on the days when we had stuff super early, it was nice to just be able to, have someone pick me up. So I was really grateful for having someone like that when I was in service as well. I'm not sure why my PowerPoint just closed. Yeah, so just a little bit about transportation. Just a little bit about relocation and housing again now. So I just like to remind folks that, finding housing is probably the most important and most stressful aspect of the beginning of your service. We know that a lot of folks that serve in Seattle come from out of state. And so it's one of the biggest stress points. And I just like to remind folks that we do try to provide supports for you, some of them in this session, some of them that'll be in this deck afterwards, and some things that I'll also send out after this, but it is ultimately up to each member to find and secure their own housing. We want to support you as much as possible, but ultimately, you're the one that has to sign the lease and find those roommates and take the steps to actually move into a place here. In the same vein as that, we highly recommend living with roommates. If you don't know, you will quickly find out that the cost of living in Seattle is pretty high, and so it's very unlikely that you'd be able to afford a place by yourself living in Seattle on the stipend. So we highly encourage folks to live with roommates. I know in my time in service, it was pretty much everyone lived with a roommate unless they were living at home or they knew someone that lived in Seattle they could stay with. And there's a lot of good options in Seattle in terms of like houses to rent. And I knew a ton of people that lived in like 5-bedroom houses. And that, also made it fun. Those are the houses that we hung out at on the weekends and stuff too. So definitely encourage you to live with roommates. I also strongly encourage folks to find a house that they can move into before registration day on August 2nd. Once registration day hits, there's a lot going on. Like you'll only have to come to registration day and then we start a week later. But especially once that start date hits, things get really busy and trying to navigate, living in a new city while at the same time trying to navigate this new job that is very demanding can be really tough. So I really encourage folks to find a place that they can move into prior to August 2nd. And, with the nature of month-to-month rents and stuff, like, that July 31st, August 1st are pretty prime dates for moving. Additionally, I really encourage folks to start saving now. One of the things that I didn't realize when I went and lived on my own for the first time is sort of what you need to even be able to rent a place. And typically you need 3 months rent up front to secure a place. And that's because most landlords or leasing companies ask for first and last month's rent in addition to a security deposit. Obviously, the last month that you live in this place, you won't have to pay rent because you will have already paid it. And if you leave the place in good shape, you should get that security deposit back. But it is important to understand that you're looking at around 3 months rent just to move into a place and to start saving as soon as possible for that. Just a note here as well, I've already touched on this, but in addition to the map, in this deck, in this recording, I'm going to share out some info from currently serving ACMs around housing in the past. And then I really strongly encourage everyone start thinking about putting together a budget. I've put together just kind of an example of what to think about in doing this. You are going to be living on a stipend, right? And you all know that coming into this experience that, unfortunately, we, don't provide a huge stipend, but it is intended to be enough for you to live on and be able to serve our students in Seattle while you're doing it. So your monthly stipend is going to be $1,440 a month pre-tax. So you can kind of use that number as a starting point, and then, thinking about, really targeting in on finding a place that you can rent with roommates and stuff, where it'll be cost each of you $600 to $800 a month. If you can find less than that in a place that you like, go for it. You know, the less you pay in rent, the more you're going to kind of have to do what you want, you know, for recreation. I also like to add in here too, to think about like, you know, you will be eligible for food stamps as an AmeriCorps member, and to really consider taking advantage of that, because that's an extra $100 to $200 a month that you can use to pay for food. You know, and it's free money. It doesn't have to come out of your stipend then. And these are just a few examples of other things to think about. You know, if you're gonna have your car out there, what's your insurance gonna cost? What's gas gonna cost? Thinking about, you know, different things like Wi-Fi. If you're gonna have Wi-Fi at your house, what that's gonna cost, your phone bill, your utilities. And then if you want to, like, especially like if you want to live really frugally during this service year and walk away having saved money, it is possible. But I would strongly encourage to really budget everything out if that's your plan. So this is just an example of things to think about in terms of creating a budget. Then I just wanted to bring to your attention two things that you may already know. But if you're relocating more than 50 miles to serve with City or Seattle, you will be eligible for these two benefits. The first is the relocation assistance. This is a one-time $500 taxable payment that you get for moving more than 50 miles to serve. It shows up in your first or second paycheck. Unfortunately, we can't get it to you until you start working with us, which is why we can't give it to you like before you move here, but it is meant to help pay back for some of the costs that you're going to spend relocating to Seattle to be of service. And then additionally, we have our transitional housing benefit. We encourage folks not to use this unless they absolutely need it, especially considering that we want you to have housing secured before you move. We understand that's not possible for everyone, in which case we can give you a little bit of time. You know, so we can help you pay for like a hotel or an Airbnb for up to 6 nights until you can like move into a place that you've secured or find housing. So two things to think about to take advantage of if you're moving more than 50 miles to be of service. And then I'm going to share this link in the chat. This is just a link to kind of help us gauge what sort of engagement you all might want and things that would be helpful to you between now and when you start service with us. Because, you know, we're going to host this session and we're going to have another session or two on registration and relocation and stuff, but we also want to make sure that we're getting information to you that you all really want. So I'm going to drop this in the chat, and then when you all have time at some point, if you just want to take a few minutes to fill out that survey, that would be hugely helpful to us. So copy and paste that somewhere, and then afterwards, if you could take it, I'll also include that in my follow-up with the recording and the deck and stuff. So I know we just kind of blasted quite a bit of information at everyone. So we really want to open it up now for Q&A. I know that folks have a lot of questions, are wondering a lot of things about service in general, about Seattle specifically. And so I kind of want to open it up for everyone to be able to ask their questions. So feel free to you know, come off mute and ask a question or to drop a question in the chat. And yeah, feel free to direct them at myself. If you have like specific questions for Hannah or Leslie, that's great too. But we just want to make sure we help you answer any questions, whether it's about living and serving in Seattle or any other questions you might have about housing, relocation, registration, anything like that. So I'm going to quit talking and pass it to y'all for any questions you might have. Awesome. So yeah, Grayson, do you recommend getting a second job when serving? I think different people have different views on this. And so I like to highlight a few things. First off, that's totally up to you, right? If you want to work a second job on the nights or the weekends and you feel like you can do that without like burning yourself out, and you know, and that's great. A couple things to consider are if you're working a second job, your food stamps may be less because you have additional income other than the stipend. So that's one thing to think about. Another thing to think about is the fact that if you do take on a second job, the city year schedule is not flexible. So there won't be a situation where you can like ask your manager, hey, I need to leave 15 minutes early to go to my second job. Like the expectation is that if you're committed to city year, you're there for the full day, which for us is between you start between 7 and 8 a.m. and go until between 5 and 6 p.m. So yeah, as long as it doesn't interfere with that, that's fine. So that really comes down to like your work-life balance and what you know you need to be successful and happy. And so it's definitely up to you. Personally, I wouldn't have taken a second job. I really budgeted to make sure that I could survive on just the stipend. And honestly, I think you can in a way that you can still like have a really awesome time in Seattle. And so yeah, that's just some information to think about with the answer kind of being, it's up to you, knowing that the city year schedule is not very flexible and that you may get less food stamps if you have extra income. In terms of an estimate of the stipend after tax, I would encourage you to do that because you know your your tax information better than I do. You know if you need to claim dependents. So I would encourage you to look into that. A couple things to think about is like, for example, there's no state tax and no state income tax in Washington, just federal income tax. So I think, if I was to make a conservative estimate, and this is something that I always just kind of think about, and I try to go a little bit higher. I always try and think of like taxes being around 30%. That's probably a little high. But I also live in Michigan where we have not only city, but state and federal taxes. So something to think about that. Hannah or Leslie, do either of you have insight on the food stamp questions when they'd be able to apply? I think we give some direction on that during BTA, but maybe one of you can touch on that.
I can speak on that. Yeah, I think that you can apply, I think, as soon as you like start with city year. I think that you need employment verification from city year. So that's why like probably the week or two that you first start in August. And one thing I wanted to plug, thinking of food stamps, and one of my favorite things to do in Seattle is to go to the farmers market. And that when you go to the farmers market, there's like if you have food stamps, the market will match the amount that you take out. So say you want $10 worth of your food stamps, they'll match that $10. So you'll have $20 to spend and you'll get like fresh food, be able to support local farmers. And there are, even though it rains in Seattle, there are year-round farmers markets. Yeah. But Leslie, is there anything that you'd add? Cool.
I answered this one in the chat, but I'll just say it out loud too for folks that aren't following the chat. The question was, do we get reimbursed for ORCA cards or are they preloaded? They are preloaded. So like you won't have to spend money and get money back on it. The ORCA card will just get you on the bus and on the light rail. You'll just swipe it as you get on. Other questions, wonderings? I see some good ones coming in the chat here. Will registration and training take place? Will registration and training take place at the city year office? That is up in the air right now, but it will be located in Seattle. And it really depends on, as I touched on earlier, what the office space looks like. Unless, I don't know, Hannah, have you heard any news on the new office space that I maybe am not in touch with that you wanted to share? And then in terms of registration and training?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard any updates about that, but I think just expect that there will be in-person trainings within Seattle as well as some virtual trainings as well. But I believe the majority of them will be in person. We're working this summer with different COVID regulations changing in King County. So we're trying to be as aligned as we can be with King County and CDC and be responsive to like what our community needs and wants out of those training spaces. But yeah, expect it in Seattle.
Thanks, Hannah. Um, yeah, I mean, so typical like utility bills in Seattle, it depends on where you live. Some places are included in rent, but you'll want to think about you'll likely um, have to pay electric and possibly waste management. So that it's hard to say exactly because it just depends on the place that you live and what's included in the rent. Um, but yeah, they'll definitely be, I think I would expect to pay anywhere from 100 to 200 bucks a month in utilities, maybe less than that. But just to kind of go on the higher side and just to set yourself up for success. Hannah or Leslie, do either of you want to talk about school placement? I think, and then we can talk. I can talk a little bit about the process around like regional placement. But do either of you want to just touch on like what school placement looks like and when it happens?
It usually happens I believe either the end of the first week or the second week of BTA. So like in August, you'll find out which school you're serving at. And um, yes, I think in terms of region though, it might be sooner. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you'll find out your team and everything during BTA in August.
Yeah, and so we're working with the managing director in Seattle right now to try and figure out regional placement. Um, so yeah, TBD on that, but hopefully soon. And yeah, and then like school placement happens within the first couple weeks of service where you find out what school and who your team's going to be. Um, um, in terms of getting help for food stamps and stuff, like there will definitely be some supports during BTA around that and kind of what to expect. Basically, the process is you'll have to apply for it and then go to DSHS and do a few things, but there'll definitely be some support around that. But you will have to, take some certain steps as well. And then in terms of moving to Seattle, I really encourage folks to move to Seattle and be in their place that they're living by August 2nd, which is when the registration date is. Yes, Hannah might be typing in the chat, but sorry, BTA is Basic Training Academy. So yes, it's what we call our first like month of training. Yeah, I mean, that's the question about how many roommates do most volunteers have in order to make rent more affordable. That's really there's no like set answer for that. When I served, I lived with two other folks. I know that the house that we all kind of hung out at had like 5 or 6 folks living in it. So I don't know, Hannah and Leslie, do you all have roommates? And when you served, well, Leslie, you're still serving. Um, what does that look like for you all?
Yeah. So one thing that I did want to mention, and it's kind of related to like finding out like like your region or your school. So when I was planning to move to Seattle, one thing that was really helpful is I looked for like a temporary lease. So it was like for 3 months, and that was really helpful, especially because I just knew generally that I was going to be serving on the west side, but I didn't know what school. So it was like nice to have like a shorter lease. to then like be able to find a place that was like near school, especially because I didn't have a car last year. So I relied heavily on public transportation. So that was just like a little note if you want to keep in mind. Short leases are a thing. And then the question about, oh yeah, roommates. Yeah, I have like rented rooms, so I did live with other people, but they didn't serve within city year. Um, I think personally I that was like what I preferred because you know, like if you all work together and you live together, you know, it can get like sometimes like overwhelming. So just like keeping that in mind. But like Bear was saying, it's like preference. Yeah, it definitely depends. Like the amount of people in the housing in the house will definitely make the rent cheaper. But you also want to keep in mind like you're gonna work long hours. You're gonna want to have like your own personal space. So like yes, like I do understand like budgeting is like important, but it's also important to keep in mind like your health, you know. Um, and yeah, that is all I have to share.
Yeah, I would just echo all of that. I also didn't live with citier people when I moved to Seattle. I went to college in Tacoma, which is about 25 miles south of Seattle. So I was living in Washington already and moved up with some friends from college. But yes, living with at least two people made rent more affordable. And I also appreciated that boundary. But a lot of my friends who served in city year lived with like 3 or 4 other city years, and it was a good experience having people who understood what the day to day was like and to be able to process with them. I think it just required some important boundary setting, like when are we talking about work and when are we relaxing? um, yeah, and I think this question of like, what's the best time to move to Seattle? I mean, I think anytime, and maybe July, so you have some time to like settle in before registration. But I love Leslie's suggestion about temporary housing for a few months to kind of get your footing as well.
Mhm. And I would say too, there's a very big like I don't know if I'd call it a culture, but like there's always people like looking to rent a room in their house to people in Seattle. Like if you go online, there's always someone like, hey, I have a room for rent. You know, if that's something you're more interested in, if it might be more short term or, you know, you want to figure some other stuff out first, that's always an option. You know, I think I already said my experience. I didn't know if I said this, but I lived with two other city year members, and we found a house that we were actually in 3 different countries at the time. We decided to be roommates and got a house without seeing it, and it was kind of scary. It ended up working out. I don't suggest not having someone see the house before you move in, but we did it, and it worked out. Um, but yeah, so it's kind of up to your level of comfortability, and like both Hannah and Leslie have talked about too, like if you are living with other core members, like trying to create those boundaries, because you know you're going to be working 10 to 12 hours a day with each other as well. In terms of Maya's question, do we get any preference for academic subjects, age groups that we're working with? So as part of the I think, well, one of the most recent emails I sent out, there's a survey, and that's kind of we at the end, and that survey is what we use to sort of do placement. And so a number of things are taken into consideration in placement, including your comfortability and experience working with different academic subjects and different age groups. Additionally, like where you're living, what kind of transportation you have access to, who you're living with. There's a ton of different things that go into school placement. And definitely like one of the, you know, some of the more important things are the experiences that you have. Ultimately, like our teams that we make, we want them to be as diverse as possible in terms of like background and experience, because our goal is to make sure that our schools and our students have the best support possible, and the most like exposure to diverse experience as possible. And so definitely those things will be considered. And you can, you know, through that survey sort of advocate for yourself as well. Um, um, in terms of when you'll be able to get the Orca card, that will happen during BTA. I'm not exactly sure when that might happen. Oh, you get it during registration day. Okay, that's good to know. Awesome. I didn't know that. Thanks, Hannah. Cool. Yeah, so you'll get access to that Orca card right away, which is good. I think during my core year, we did not. We got it during BTA. So it's good to know that they've got that for registration day now. Awesome. Any other questions? Any concerns you might have that we can help address? That's a great question, Colin. And I'm going to pass it to the two people that are actually, again, actually in this service right now, as I'm a step kind of removed in my position now. So um, well, first let me say before I pass it over, it is possible, and I encourage not to do any work after hours. That being said, like, it's heavy work, and so you're kind of thinking about it and stuff. And again, that comes down to like self-care and stuff. But I'll pass it to Hannah and Leslie to talk more directly about like, let's go Hannah first, and then Leslie to talk about sort of hours after.
Yes, I would agree. Leave that work at work. Leave it at work. Don't take it home. I think that's like, in my first year, I think I would maybe, as I was learning how to lesson plan and how to lead small groups, something that helped me was to try to do some prep on Sunday, evening. And as I got more confident in that small group space, I didn't need to take that work and do it on the weekend. Knowing yourself and the way you work is important, and know that it'll evolve and change based on your skill set throughout the year. But bottom line, yeah, I would, hopefully 10 hours is a long day, so that's enough to get everything done. But Leslie, I'll pass it to you.
Definitely echoing what both of you shared. Yeah, confession. Yeah, my first year, we would work from 7 to 5, and sometimes I would stay later after school, so I wouldn't go home till 7. And yes, I needed that time to get work done. But this year I told myself, I was like, I'm gonna make that boundary, work is for work. There'll be time during the day to get things done. No need to stress yourself about staying after work. It will get done. And also you're gonna have a team. So don't forget that people are gonna be there to help you. You are not alone. We are in this together. So yes. So keeping that in mind.
Awesome. Well, I will kind of close this out here, knowing that I'll stay on for a little bit too, in case anyone has any other questions. But I want to thank you all for joining us. And like I said, I'll be sending out some resources shortly for y'all to use. Again, if you need anything at all, reach out to me via email. This is a very busy time of the year for us, and so if you have an email that you've sent and I haven't gotten back to you yet, know that I will respond to it. Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Thanks to Hannah and Leslie for joining as well and sharing their insight. I'll stay on, but definitely feel free to hop off. And yeah, we'll be in touch soon.
So I just have a quick question, kind of. So I think you said that the survey was like a great opportunity for us to kind of like advocate for like where we want to be placed. Um, but the thing is, I already like signed a lease with some of my housemates because we went to college together. So that was done, and it's in the U district. So I think in the survey I didn't like put down where it was at. I was wondering if there's like a way for me to like go back and kind of just say, hey, like U district, like it might be like easier for me to like, if possible, commute like up north.
Mhm. Yeah, I would encourage you to just retake the whole thing.
Okay.
And we will use your most recent result. And I would say, yeah, that's like if you are already living up there, like I can't guarantee anything, but we don't want people to have a crazy commute. And since you've already sort of secured that, when we do regional placement, knowing that is important. So we can kind of let you know, hopefully sooner rather than later, that you'll probably be in Olympic Hills. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. And I don't think I was just looking at the survey right before. I already turned it in, but I didn't see like a place. It said like if you're already like living in Seattle, give the address. Right now I'm not in Seattle, I'm home. So do I just like say yes anyways? And then put in the address there? Or should I just like add it into like the bottom where it says like any extra information?
Yeah, I would just add it in any extra information, just so we don't, just put down there like I've already secured housing in Seattle in the U district in the extra information part.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, Denise, have a good one.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so I have a relatively quick question. Damn, now I gotta have it come back to me. I had a lot of distractions around me just a few seconds. Um, oh, so about like I asked earlier about the metro. I couldn't hear your response.
What was your question?
I asked not the metro about I had written it out, so it's shouldn't be that hard for me to pull it back. I tried to write out most of my questions. Oh, is there help for filing for assistance, like not necessarily renters assistance, but like cash assistance, like you said, like food stamps and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely during our training there'll be some help on resources in helping you to file for assistance. Yeah, but basically what you'll have to do though is we'll get you an employment verification letter and you'll apply through the DSHS website, and then you'll go down there and have a brief interview, and then they'll approve you for however much they approve you for.
Okay. So you guys basically covered all the points about like the actual living situation, but like so I'm a certified bartender.
Okay.
Would it be like would it even be reasonable to pick up bartending on the weekends? Because like what is our schedule like? Is it just a regular Monday through Friday?
Yeah, it's Monday through Friday from 7 to 5. So the weekend is pretty open for you to do whatever you want to on the weekend.
Well, that's perfect because bartending is mostly a night and a weekend gig, and that's
Yep.
where I make all my money.
Cool.
All right, so I could probably do that a couple months and then make enough for rent for the year.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
All right, awesome. So I'll probably do that for the first like 2-3 months, and then because I know Seattle's a high income area,
Yeah.
and I bartended in East Windsor, which isn't nearly as dense as Seattle. Now it's
Yeah.
bringing
Cool.
charge it though.
Awesome.
So yeah, that was basically my only questions. Oh, also, I can't get into the workday. Would I be able to email you about that later?
Yeah, what I'll do too though is I'll just like you'll have to contact the helpline, the Workday helpline, and they can help you get into it. And yeah, you'll just have to give them a